Are you older or younger than Mr. Kowalski?
Younger,
By how many years?
about 5.5 years
Where'd you grow up?
in Chicago.
How many kids were in the Kowalski family?
Well, our extended family, my mother had 8 children.
Boys, girls?
6 boys, 2 girls. But we always had more in the house. We always had a cousin or we had a foster child at one point. So big loving family.
And you went to high school in Chicago?
Yes, sir, I did.
And so Jack would have graduated well ahead of you.
Yes.
And what did he go to work doing?
During high school, we had a fire cadet program through the fire department junior and senior year. Jack did that and got into the fire service. And I eventually did the same thing. I worked as a volunteer up there. He went on in his life to eventually get hired full time, and I took a different career path.
What was your career path?
I've had several, but I went into law enforcement instead of firefighting at that time.
And where were you in law enforcement?
Up in Pinellas County, Tarpon Springs, Florida.
So you ended up from Chicago down here in Florida on law enforcement?
Yes.
And what roles were you serving in your law enforcement career?
I worked as a patrol officer for under a year until I made detective, and then I worked property crimes for just under a year again, and then I went into crimes against persons, which is all the nasty stuff, the sex abuse, the child abuse, the homicide, and the crimes against persons.
So in those 5 years, you learned how to spot child abuse?
Yes, sir, I did.
And why, after 5 years, did your law enforcement career end?
Burnout, really. You know, you do that job and you're professional and you go to work every day, and I definitely left on good terms. But you go to work every day and then you do what you're supposed to do, but then you find yourself at home in the shower crying at night, and it takes a toll on you. And I had an offer at the time to go work for another company, and it was actually a little more money, and I decided that I was gonna make that move.
And after you resigned from the force, did you leave Florida?
Yes, eventually. I went to work for that other company, and then in, I believe, 1997, I left Florida after my son was born.
And where'd you go?
Up to Indiana.
And what kind of work did you do up in Indiana?
We went to Indiana mainly because I had 2 stepchildren and a newborn son, and my wife had family up in Indiana, lived out in the country, and we decided that would be a better place to raise the children. So we went up there, and I worked as a butcher, which is something I've done since I was young on the side. I've always worked in butcher shops, and then also auto, marine, and airplane upholstery work, which is what my father and uncles all did. So I've always done that on the side as well.
So at this point in your life, you're living in Indiana. Is Jack still in Chicago at this point?
Yes.
And it was during this period that Jack met Beata.
Yes.
And living in Indiana, how far away were you from the Chicago area?
We're in Fort Wayne, so just a couple hours, about 2-hour drive.
So you had opportunity to regularly meet and interact with Jack and Beata together?
Yes, because my mother was still in Chicago, and I had a couple brothers up there, so we frequently visited.
What was your first impression of Beata?
I loved her. She's just she was just a wonderful person. I respected her because she was very to the point. She didn't hold any punches. She told you how she was feeling. But she was just a loving, sweet person. Loved to teach me how to make pierogies, and you know, she was a great person.
How would you describe their relationship?
Beautiful. We, you know, coming from a big family, my mom raised us, and we were always taught to love each other and respect each other and respect everybody. And, you know, that's why we got into careers like we did, you know, firefighting and law enforcement, because we help each other and we help other people. And Beata was that same way. And my wife is a nurse, and those are the people we've always chose to surround ourselves with, are people like us. And I'm sorry, I don't even remember what your original question was.
That's all right. So your wife was a nurse and Beata was a nurse.
Yes,
So you and Jack had that in common.
yes,
Were you there for their wedding, Jack and Beata?
yes, I was their best man.
And where was that?
That was in Illinois.
In Chicago?
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall what year?
Ooh, now you're really going to tug at me here. No, I don't recall exactly what year. I think it was like 2004, 2003.
Were you there when Maya was born, or around that time?
Not there when she was born, but, you know, shortly afterwards, obviously, to visit.
How'd Beata strike you as a new mom?
Just, you know, she was holding the light of her life in her hands every time you saw her. Just as proud as any mother could be.
And then Kyle came, what, 2 years later?
Mm-hmm.
And you're still living in Indiana as Kyle and Maya are growing up in Chicago?
Yes.
How often would you see them on a yearly basis, if you had to estimate?
You know, obviously all the holidays and birthdays and things like that, we'd get together. So probably, you know, at least a half dozen to a dozen times a year.
And how would you describe Jack and Beata together as parents when Kyle and Maya were young in Chicago?
Just a great couple. Jack's my best friend. He found the light of his life, and he was happy, and they were great together.
So as he was approaching retirement from the fire department, did he talk to you about a desire to move to Florida?
Mm-hmm.
And he beat you back to Florida, is that right?
Yeah, he did.
So they moved to Florida in around 2014. You were still doing work in Indiana in the
Yes.
upholstery business, aircraft upholstery business at that point?
Yes.
Was there a particular job that brought you down to Florida around that time?
Yeah, I had friends in Florida in the aviation business, and a friend of mine who managed business jets for people. So if somebody has a business jet, they'll typically hire a management company to take care of all the FAA paperwork and that kind of thing, and maintenance. And he called me and he says, we have this jet that we manage that needs a complete upholstery job in it, and he says, I'd like you to bid on it. And I was a little shocked at first. I said, I don't live down there. And he said, bid on it. He says, it's good money. So I bid on the job, and it was worth my while to go down there and do the job. So I set up a trailer with sewing machines and everything, and went down there and did the job. And that started my move to Florida because it was successful.
Where was that work? Which airport?
In Lakeland, Florida.
And were you living in Lakeland, or were you living in Venice at that time?
At that time, we had a big motor home, so I have another brother who lives in Lakeland, so I brought the motor home down, and I was actually living in the motor home while I was working at the motor home was at his house.
And Kyle and Maya have opportunity to come over and see you in your aviation business in Lakeland.
Yes, especially Kyle.
What do you remember about that?
Kyle loved to fly. I flew back and forth every day. Well, at that time, I didn't have my plane in the early stages. But Kyle loved airplanes, and he would come out and help me. I was building a new shop, and he came and helped me build all the tables to put the sewing machines in, and we spent a lot of time together. Just a great, happy little kid.
What's he call you, by the way? What's Kyle call you?
Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bob. Did Maya fly with you as well?
Yes, eventually, yeah.
She wasn't as big of a fan as Kyle.
No, I think she had a good time.
Okay. The job you mentioned that brought you down to Florida, who was the client or the customer for that job?
The owner of the jet, I remember his first name was Eduardo. They owned some banks in Mexico, but the pilot is who I dealt with, and his name was Abraham.
And I'm going to fast forward here for a moment in the timeline, because you're doing this work in the upholstery business for the pilot Abraham in 2014, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And just for a moment, just to fast forward a couple of years, in late 2015, Maya went down to Mexico for treatment. You were aware of that?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury what the connection was there with Abraham and Maya's treatment in Mexico?
Abraham and his family lived in Monterrey, Mexico, which is where the hospital was that they were going to. He immediately, when I told him the story of what was going on, he immediately said, put me in touch with them, and I will take care of everything when they get to Mexico. Abraham and his family met them at the hospital, and they were there for him the whole time. Anything they needed in Mexico. Gave Maya a big stuffed animal bear.
Do you recall if Maya, Jack, Beata were able to bring that bear back to Florida with them?
No, that's kind of a funny story because it was this big, real soft, big teddy bear, and it was too big for them to bring back on the commercial flight. So Abraham had to bring the plane back to me to finish things up, and he put the bear in the nose cone of the jet in a little storage compartment and flew the bear back up to Lakeland, Florida. And Jack and Maya came out and met us at the airport there, and we wheeled Maya up to the plane and opened the nose cone, and the bear just kind of fell out for her. It was just a cute moment, and a great thing for the guy to do.
Your Honor, I'd like to show Mr. Reina's what's been admitted as Exhibit 2530-020. May we publish?
Yes, you may.
Yep, that's Maya getting her teddy bear, and that's Abraham.
So the gentleman there handing her the teddy bear is Abraham,
Yes,
and Maya in the wheelchair.
yes,
Is that his plane right there in the background?
yes, with the hatch open on the right.
What kind of plane was it? Do you remember?
It was a Cessna Citation, or I'm sorry, a Cessna Mustang.
And this photo is January 30th, 2016. Does that sound right?
Yes,
So this was after her ketamine treatment in Mexico,
yes.
a month or two after. All right, that's good, thank you. All right, so I fast forward there to show the teddy bear coming back, but let's back it up a little bit. You relocate to Florida initially for this job in 2014, 2015. Did there come a time when you moved to Venice permanently?
Yeah, I think, once I started my second job, my wife worked in a surgery center up in Indiana, and we both immediately started talking about making a move to Florida. So we actually found a house in Jack's little circle. The neighborhood he lives in, it's really a unique neighborhood because all of the neighbors in there know each other and they all hang out together, and so we wanted that neighborhood, and there was one house for sale, and we came down to look at it, and the night before we got there it went under contract, so we were a little heartbroken, but they were starting a new subdivision right across the street, and we ended up buying a spec home right inside the gate, so we were still probably less than a quarter mile from Jack, right across the street.
So Jack couldn't get away from you.
No, I found him.
And so this was, if I'm tracking, is it, early 2016 when you bought that house?
Yes.
And by this point, based on your observations, was Maya in pain?
After the Mexico, she was doing much better. She was greatly improving.
You had seen her before the Mexico
Yeah,
trip.
because I was coming down, doing the jobs on the airplanes, and even though I was in Lakeland, I would come over and visit. And, we would get together. But after Mexico, there was definite improvement. She was working hard to get better.
As 2016 went on, summer, it's almost the school year. Did her pain return?
Yeah.
What can you tell the jury about that?
I read Maya's face a lot, and you can tell when somebody's in pain. I have a lot of pain and neurological issues myself, and there was a day that stands out, and I think it was probably like September of 16, where we were at Jack's house, and the kids from the neighborhood, and there may have been a niece or nephew there, and Kyle and Maya, and everybody was in the pool and having a good time, and Maya was on a floaty, and I was just sitting there with my feet in the pool after a while watching the kids, and I could see as time went on she was hurting more and more, and she's a lot like her mom. She's a tough girl, and she wanted to stay in the pool with the kids, so she tried to fight through that and tried to stay in the pool as long as she could, but it finally got to the point where she couldn't take it anymore, and she floated over to me and she said, "Uncle Bobby, I need to get out of the pool." She says, "That hurt real bad." So I picked her up and I carried her in the house.
Was it shortly after that she went to Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the exact date, but yes.
Did you ever accompany Maya or Jack or Beata to any of her treatments?
No, unfortunately I wasn't allowed to.
So she goes into Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. How did you first learn that she wasn't going to be coming home soon?
Jack and I talked every day, and he called me and told me, he says, "They took Maya." And I said, "What do you mean they took Maya?" And he says, "They took custody of Maya, they took her away from us." And me, like him, and everybody else, like Maya, like Beata, everybody was in shock, not understanding what just happened.
How would you describe your brother's reaction knowing that she couldn't come home?
Fear which is something I've never seen on Jack's face before. I've seen him do stuff on the fire department that most people in this world would never try, dangling off of water towers and stuff. And I've never seen fear on his face, but it was just, he was scared. For the first time I saw my brother really, truly scared.
Same question. What about Beata? How'd she react?
Angry. Jack and Beata were a little different in that respect, where Beata was, like I said, she would tell you how she feels, and Jack was kind of the opposite of that, where he would tell you how he feels, but just a different reaction, where Beata was mad and scared, and but definitely angry.
What about your nephew Kyle?
He was just a little boy. He was devastated, His sister, and they were close. They, a lot of little kids don't play together. They were in that pool all the time. They did everything together. And so, at 8 years old, I think he was at the time, he lost his best friend. I don't know the words. Shocked, scared, just unbelievable.
And you were aware at this point that the accusations by the hospital were that Beata had this condition and was a child abuser?
Yes.
Drawing off of your experience as a detective with child abuse investigations, had you ever seen any signs of child abuse in the Kowalski home? Jack Kowalski.
Objection, I'd like to approach.
Approach. Objection is sustained.
When Maya was in the hospital, did you submit your name for a background check so that you could be a supervised visitor at the hospital?
Yes, I did.
Was your background check approved?
Yes.
Were you allowed to visit?
No, I was not.
Did the hospital ever give you a reason why?
Objection.
I'm going to overrule that question.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Did the hospital ever give you a reason why you weren't allowed to visit?
They didn't think it was a good idea.
Objection, Your Honor. Can we approach?
The objection is sustained. Members of the jury, that last question and answer, you're going to disregard it.
How long was Maya in the hospital?
I honestly don't recall. Several months.
Did you ever have the opportunity to visit her in the hospital?
No, I did not.
Who were you getting reports from during that time about Maya's condition?
Mostly Jack.
During the 3 or so months that Maya was in the hospital, how was Beata doing?
She was struggling. She was researching a lot about the disease, just struggling, trying to figure out how to get her baby home.
How was your brother doing?
Trying to hold the family together. In such an ugly situation, he tried to be the strong one and keep Kyle going and keep Beata on track, and just he was struggling.
January 8th, 2017. Does that date have any significance to you?
Yeah, it's my 50th birthday.
Can you describe how you woke up that morning?
Jack called me and said Beata just hung herself, and you need to get over here right away.
Did you rush over to
Yes,
Jackson?
immediately. I told my wife Beata hung herself, and I'm going to Jack's, and I took off across the street.
And you went into the house?
Yes,
Did you go in through the front door or the garage?
front door.
Where was Kyle?
Kyle was near the laundry room door, which is just to the right of the front door. And he was trying to get into the garage. Jack was yelling, Kyle, no, you can't go in there. He was trying to keep him back.
Can I stop you there?
Mhm.
Your Honor, we'd like to, at this point, publish 2615 and allow the jury the opportunity to listen.
Is it in evidence?
It is, Your Honor.
You may.
You were at 8:20:17 and hours 57 minutes and 38 seconds. Damn.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
Hung herself.
What's the address? What city are you in?
Venice. Closest road is Lee Road in Venice.
Is there a name to the neighborhood?
Kyle,
What's the phone number that you're calling from?
I'll give you my cell.
Tell me exactly what happened.
She hung herself in the garage. No.
Stay on the line. Are you with her now?
Well, I'm in the garage.
How old is she?
42.
Is she awake? I just have to verify.
She's stiff. She's stiff. Oh my God. No, Kyle, you can't go in there.
Okay, tell me why she looks like she's dead.
No, I'm a retired deputy fire chief. I know she is.
Do you think she's beyond any help?
Beyond, yes, rigor mortis. I'm sure she's She's really
Okay. I'm sending I'm sending someone to assist you. Please leave everything as you found it.
I'm
Is
not
there anything
touching
we can do for you?
Okay, just please get somebody here.
They're on their way.
I'm gonna bring my son to my neighbor's or call my neighbor.
Okay. Can you tell me the address there one more time? Okay, they're on their way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
What'd you do with Kyle when you got there?
I grabbed Kyle and I asked Jack if he could call the fire department. And just told him I'm getting Kyle out of here. And I scooped up Kyle, and he's just a skinny little boy, and I grabbed him and took him home, and we sat in a chair in my living room for probably 6 or 8 hours crying.
Did you see Jack the rest of that day?
I'm sure I did when I brought Kyle back, or I don't recall honestly.
Maya was still at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
Yes.
How long was it after that morning that Maya came home from the hospital?
Not long at all. I don't remember how many days, but it was pretty quick.
So emotionally, we can all guess how Maya was at that point.
Yeah.
How was she physically when she came home out of the hospital?
Horrible. Horrible. She had been getting so much better, and just to see her going from, improving every day to coming home and her feet were all turned inward, her toes were pointing at each other. Again, just looking at her face, the amount of pain in that child, I think it was worse than I had ever seen at that point.
To where she was in late September, early October of 2016 before she went in the hospital. In January 2017, when she comes out of the hospital, was she better or worse?
She was far worse coming out of the hospital.
What'd you do to support your brother in the next days and weeks?
I closed my shop down, and I stayed with him. I think I closed my shop probably for a couple months, and I stayed with him every day and helped him with paperwork, cleaning the house, cooking meals, whatever it took, just anything, just to be there for him.
As the Kowalskis grappled with their new life, did you have the opportunity to observe Maya physically rehabilitate herself?
Yeah, and she lost her mother, so she was obviously emotionally in a different place. But from a physical standpoint, she's a lot like a mother. She was just very determined, and she was going to work hard, and she wanted out of that wheelchair, and she wanted to walk again. And she worked out constantly through the pain. I would see her on the floor in front of her wheelchair doing exercises with tears coming out of her eyes, but she would fight right through it. And then one day, after she had finally gotten up on crutches, one day I come over and she's loading up her book bag, not to go to school, but she's putting all kinds of books in her book bag, and she put it on her back just to walk down the street to her friend Riley's house on her crutches. And she wanted that extra weight on her back for exercise and the practice so she can go back to school. She's a tough kid. And I love you, Maya.
How about your nephew, Kyle? How'd he do in the 6 months, year after he lost his mother?
Very introverted. I mean, how does any kid do knowing that they're never going to see their mother again? He struggled. He was very quiet, stayed in his room, didn't interact much with anybody. And I think it was, he was trying to grieve internally. And then he eventually, long term, getting to the point where he is now, he fishes. That's his outlet. He likes to fish. It's his place to get away. I think Maya immersed herself in her school books when she got back to school, and Kyle immersed himself in fishing. And Jack immersed himself in helping people again. I think he just, like I said, eventually turned to fishing to have his quiet time and to deal with this.
And my last question, your brother Jack, how has he changed since losing Beata?
He's changed the most, and he hides it the most. He's not as funny as he used to be. He's a dad and a mom, and he's the best father I've ever known. He's always been the best father I've ever known. But taking on the role of being a mother as well for those children, there's nobody in this world that could have done it better. He will do anything for his children. He, again, needed some kind of an outlet, and I kind of did too with the pain issues I was going through. So I think for my last 5 years living in Florida, I saw Jack more than my wife, literally, because we would get up every morning and go get coffee at Wawa and sit down and have a sandwich and talk to a couple old vets that would sit out there every morning, and we'd kind of hang out with them. And then we would go help neighbors, whether it be painting baseboards in their house or painting their house, or we kept busy helping people, because that's what we were always taught to do. But he's changed in the sense of I keep going back to humor thinking about this. Not that you're not funny anymore. He's a very serious person because he knows the struggles he has raising 2 children alone. I'm glad I was there for him. I'm glad he was there for me. I think we helped each other a lot, but he's different. He's just, probably doesn't socialize as much. I know he doesn't socialize as much as he used to. There used to be a lot more gatherings in the neighborhood and everything that there is now, and he was always a big part of them. That neighborhood kind of became my community as well.
Your witness.
Good morning, sir.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I just have a couple of questions for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to bring you back to the trip to Mexico.
Mhm.
With regard to that photograph with the teddy bear and coming back, is it your understanding that that was from the second trip to Mexico when they went back for a booster?
I do not recall honestly what the date was on that.
Okay, you recall that they did go back to Mexico a second time.
Objection.
Legal basis?
Not facts, not evidence.
Overruled.
I don't recall.
Okay, that's fine. And then let's talk about Maya's condition leading up to going to the admission at All Children's in October.
Mhm.
Okay? You would agree, sir, that she was in a significant amount of pain, expressed pain, prior to that admission, correct?
She was in pain, but it was greatly getting better. She was getting better every day.
Okay. Are you aware, sir, of all the ketamine treatments that she was getting in the week leading up to that admission?
I knew there were treatments, and I don't know at what point I learned about ketamine specifically.
Sure. Sure. So are you aware that she was going to see Dr. Hannah on 9/27, 9/28, 9/29, 9/30, October 5th, and October 6th for ketamine treatments?
No, I knew she saw Dr. Hannah. I don't know dates of her appointments.
Okay. And just briefly, sir, about not being able to see Maya while she was in the hospital. Sir, you're aware that there were various court orders that were entered, or are you aware that there were various court orders that were entered regarding visitation?
I'm aware that I was notified that
Sir, I don't want
had permission.
I'm just asking if you're aware of the court orders. Yes or no?
That there were court orders that there was no visitation
Regarding visitation.
for other people, not for me.
Okay, sir. And all of your communications with regard to whether or not you could visit Maya were with DCF personnel, correct?
The conversations about whether or not I could visit Maya.
We're with DC, so yes or no, sir? We're with all
I'm trying to
DCF
recall.
personnel.
Please give me a second.
Sure.
This is a long time ago. I can't say all of them, but I know some of them were. I don't recall if there were any with anybody that, I don't even know who worked for the hospital. I know I did have conversations with people that work for the state.
Yes, sir. Thank you. 1 minute. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Sir, just to confirm, during the 3.5 months that Maya was in hospital, you submitted your information for a background check.
Yes,
That background check was approved.
yes,
You never had the opportunity to see Maya in the hospital.
correct.
Thank you.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, do you all have any questions for this witness? If so, just raise your hand. Seeing no hands, sir, you can go ahead and be excused. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.